What is the impact of living in a place that values consumption so much?
There's so much impact, isn't there? There's the immediate impact on ourselves, on our kind of like social groups, but then there's obviously the wider impact. Obviously, the amount of value that we place on consumerism is having horrible impacts around the world. We know, just looking at places in West Africa where, because of the amount of stuff we're buying here, it's just creating these massive landfills full of clothing because people buy something, they wear it once, and they dispose of it. They think they're giving it to charity, and gets given to charity, but so much of it gets shipped across to places in the Caribbean or places in West Africa, and it just floods their markets. It's literally flooding their land, and it's just polluting the system. So there's that impact. There's the impact, of course, on literally the physical safety and health of people who are working within this supply chain, like garment workers. But I guess if we're thinking about the impact on the individual consumer, then something I've spoken to you about, which is thinking about the addictiveness of consumerism and how it becomes almost an unconscious habit that, because we live in a society of consumerism, we are a society of consumers, it becomes second nature. If you're ever, sometimes you'll see yourself, you're sat with a friend, or maybe you're doing it yourself, and you find yourself just reaching for your phone and you start flicking through. It just becomes like habit. Your hand just starts doing it, almost like it has a life of its own, just flicking through pages and pages of pages, senselessly, unthinkingly, of clothing. Now, have you picked up your phone to look at that clothing because you really need something new and you think, oh my gosh, all my trousers have holes in now. I've tried to mend them as best as I can. I've got nothing left. I better buy some new trousers. Most of the time, probably not. Living in this consumerism country, we probably have more pairs of trousers than we need, more clothing than we can wear in a week. But we still do it. It's like, it's like any kind of addiction. So, the same way you snack, you find yourself going to your cupboard and you start snacking, not because you're hungry, but just because of the availability, right? Because it's there. And my opinion is that fashion these days and clothing is just too available. Clothes shops don't close anymore because they're always there at our fingertips. There's nothing to tell us to stop. There's no boundaries anymore to say, okay, well, I can only shop when I finish work or at the weekend, and then I can only shop until the clothes shops close. So because we've got online shopping, and also because it's so accessible, because so much of it is so cheap these days, you can literally buy an item of clothing for less than a meal.
Yeah.
So it's like you can get it instantaneously because it'll be delivered next day delivery. You can buy something, make yourself feel good, get that little hit of the feel good hormone, because we know that when you start searching for clothing and you put it in your online basket, you get this rush within your body. Your neurotransmitters start firing up and they say, oh, this is good. I'm getting some pleasure here. Do it again. So you keep swiping again, you put something else in your basket, and it becomes a habit because your brain and your reward center in your brain seeks rewards, and it tells you that thing you did before, do it again, please. And we can do it again because it's continuously accessible and because now it's ridiculously affordable. Well, so much of fashion is ridiculously affordable. So there are so few barriers to us not engaging in this behavior. And I think the impact that has on us is it can lead to addiction. It leads to a disgusting amount of waste. And I think it leads to disconnection from our clothing, because our clothing now, we have we have less of a relationship to it because it's so easy come, easy go. It's not like you were having to save your wages for X amount of time to get that one thing that you really wanted. There was no anticipation for it. There was no, excitement waiting for it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't necessarily, something you got for a special occasion that you're going to wear again and again. It was just another thing that you bought on a Tuesday night, like you did on the Monday night, and you probably will do it again in a couple of nights.
Yeah.
It just becomes so habitual, and I think it's because we just don't have to think about it anymore. We don't have to engage our brains to obtain things. They just come to us so easily.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's just as easy to get rid of the clothes too. We can, just press buy on our phone, and then when we're done with it, we'll just throw it in a bag and drop it off at the charity shop, which, we know it
Yeah.
most likely doesn't actually
Oh
end
yeah.
up being sold there. But it's just so
No.
easy to buy and so easy to discard. And yeah, something's gotta stop. And as you were mentioning, we have been seeing like an acceleration in consumption, it feels, with online shopping and,
Mhm.
the likes of
Mhm.
these ultra fast fashion brands like Shein, that they
Mhm.
literally have new arrivals every single day. I mean, that's not possible in a store. They can't turn over inventory that fast in a physical
No.
store. It's,
It's crazy, and I think it's interesting. Like you can see the like I don't judge people who buy a lot of fast fashion, and I think I before I understood what was happening, I was guilty of it. If I look in my drawers, I've still got stuff from Topshop
mm-hmm.
that I've had for years and years because I'm a bit of a hoarder. So that's a positive that I'm a hoarder. Um, but it shows you that at one point I was definitely guilty. I shopped for leisure, for
Mm-hmm.
pleasure. It was something to do, and I wasn't thinking about, oh, that's interesting that this garment last week was £40 and now it's in the sale and it's £5. How can they afford to just slash the price like
Mm-hmm.
that? It tells you how much the company actually really value that garment and how much they likely paid for the construction of that garment, that they can afford to sell it for that price. And then those are the ones that started at that price point, let alone the garments from places like Pretty Little Thing and Misguided that only start out at £10 in the first
Mm-hmm.
place. I always say to friends who, buy fast fashion, I try not to lecture because nobody likes that.
Right.
You're like, oh yeah, that's really nice. How much was it? Okay, so if that company needs to make a profit on that item, how much might the people who made it be paid? Bearing in mind, we have to factor in the factory costs, the transit of that clothing, the storage of it, posting out to use, all factored
Mm-hmm.
in. And once that top was £10, that's going down and down and down and down and down. And the moment you really stop and think about, okay, you know, how can something cost so little? That's when you begin to step back. And I think I've gone off topic with the question you actually asked me, which was,
No, it's
like, why are we seeing the acceleration?
yeah. No, that
Uh,
was definitely very relatable. And yeah, I struggle with that with like people in my life who buy fast fashion, like how to be like, I don't want to be I don't want to lecture, but I also don't want to
no,
be like, "Oh my gosh, I love it so much." And like cuz that also doesn't feel very genuine
you don't want to
either.
encourage.
Sorry?
So you don't want to encourage it.
Right, right, exactly. So it's a tough balance. But yeah, I
But I also
go
think,
ahead.
oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, I also think it's something about the new, like, there's a lot of new
Yeah.
norms, I would say now. So, like, there's this norm, like, it's acceptable to buy something and wear it once.
Mhm.
People will not blink an eye at that. It's very acceptable now, like I said a moment ago, to buy an item of clothing that costs less than a cocktail in Soho. That's odd. I think it's acceptable as well for people who, earn well to still buy this super fast fashion. We see it on social media with these, influencers who now have millions, and they're there wearing Pretty Little Thing, wearing Misguided, advertising it. And you think, but why do you buy these brands when you can afford to buy better quality and to buy from, brands that perhaps are doing less harm to the environment, to
Mhm.
people? But it's acceptable now to buy cheap. It's like, it's almost as if we have stopped seeing the value in
Mhm.
clothing. They become like just worthless, disposable things, almost in the same way. I can't think of an example. Like it just like almost like as a single use item
Yeah.
suddenly.